It's over to you, Jonathan.
Yes, it is. Hello, and welcome back to the Masonic Roundtable, a weekly program where Masons from around the world get together to talk about Masonic news and opinions in a friendly and social manner. As a reminder, the thoughts and opinions expressed here are solely the opinions of the participants and do not represent any Grand Lodge statements or positions. Make sure you keep your conversations open for the public and on the level. To interact with us, you can send questions and comments to our Facebook page for episode 255, P2, or on the YouTube chat running alongside this video. Hello and welcome and good evening to all of you joining us live. My name is John Ruark. I'm a past master of the Patriot Lodge, number 1957 in Fairfax, Virginia. Next up for introductions tonight, we have the one, the only, Robert Johnson.
Hello, Robert Johnson from Masonic Lodge, 1183 under dispensation. Back to you.
Okay. Let's see. Next up, Mike the intern. Hi, Mike. How's it going?
Hey, Mike the intern. Mike Hambrecht here. Junior Deacon and Lodge Education Officer of Triandria Lodge and also of Lakeshore Lodge number 307 in Madison, Ohio. Good evening, everyone. Oh, and now also the Grand Lodge Education Committee member representing the 25th District. So.
You know, like, you don't have to keep adding a new title every week. Okay, just so you know, you can slow down a little.
Yeah. But that's what I'm after. I'm after all the titles.
All of them. Got to catch up. So, yes, thank you for your zeal for the institution. Last but not least, Jason Richards.
Hey, good evening, everybody. Jason Richards here. Past Master of Vacation Lodge number 16 in Clifton, Virginia, member of the Colonial Lodge number 1821 in Washington, D.C. Grand Lodge committee man, but nobody cares.
But yes.
John's a Grand Lodge committee man, too.
And I am. I forgot that. Yes, I am.
Yeah, me too. Don't you forget that you're always on a Grand Lodge committee because they don't do anything, so...
I can neither confirm nor deny.
Oh, geez. It's so awkward right now.
My understanding is that mine meets every month. I was just appointed, so I don't.
I was gonna say, my understanding is.
Yeah. Actually,
nobody asked.
We may be the only committee in Grand Lodge who does meet officially once a month. Scott's the state education officer. We do a WebEx.
Oh, okay.
First Tuesday of every month.
You can't tile a WebEx, Robert.
Don't need to be tiled because nothing we're discussing is, secret. Taught by the Board of Grand Examiners and therefore not secret.
Okay, let's see.
Ooh.
And last but not least,
sneaking in to the show tonight, Mr. Senor Juan Sepulveda.
What an amazing timing. Good evening, everybody. Juan Sepulveda here from sunny Kissimmee, Florida, the host of the Winding Stairs Freemasonry podcast, now on Google Play after some weird absence. Good evening, brothers.
Better late than never. Good stuff. All right, full house tonight. Also want to give a shout out to all of our Patreon supporters. We've got some good stuff lined up for MasoniCon. You got the sneak preview from Jason last week or last episode. But we have a couple other surprises lined up. So we'll see you then at MasoniCon. And thank you to all of our patrons who have been supporting us along the way. So if you haven't got your pins, we're shipping your pins out. Don't worry, we're just catching up through the backlog.
And keep those super chats going tonight. I think Simba on Fire and Joe Martinez were doing a good job last week. Or 2 weeks ago.
That's right.
And John, real quick about the pins. If a brother has been supporting us for more than 1 month and hasn't received a pin, they need to send me an email because I received some returns and I'm trying to get a hold of them and I'm not getting an answer. So you know who you are.
And they could reach you by
email. Yeah, just juansepulveda@thewindingstairs.com.
There you go. Let's fix that little hiccup. Tonight, we're going to talk about an offer that you can't refuse. And that is the history and eventual decay and fall of Propaganda Due, or the P2 Lodge in Italy. And so this is going to be a fascinating story, history of tales and conspiracy, all the way to the top. And I can't wait to hear what what research we've all got together to put together for this. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it off to Jason, who's done the yeoman's work in outlining the history of this mysterious lodge.
So, mysterious lodge turned clandestine / criminal organization. You know, that I think there was an article I read back in 2016, 2017, around the time of the 300th anniversary, written from a Catholic perspective that said, you know, let's hope that you know, the 300th anniversary of Freemasonry won't be deadly like other anniversaries have been, or something along those lines. And I was like, what? It doesn't make any sense. Turns out that that person was referencing P2 in the Propaganda Due Lodge, out of what was originally the Grand Orient of Italy. So I started hearing things about this highly politicized Masonic offshoot and an organization, and thought it would be a really interesting episode for the Masonic Roundtable, to show, you know, what damage and Masonic turned clandestine organization can really do, because as we go through this tonight, you'll realize that a lot of the modern conspiracy theories of Masons having all the power, this one world order type of thing, Masonry being a social club for the elite or the aristocrats, only for the men in power, a lot of that is coming directly from the example of P2. So, excuse me, sorry, it's allergy season, so you'll have to deal with the sniffles. We're going to start off in Turin, Italy, about 1877. A lodge named Propaganda was constituted in Turin under the Grand Orient of Italy, and it was designed in Italy to be an elite lodge. It was, you know, very similar to the feel of like Quater Coronati today. A purpose was to perform Masonic research, essentially. John, I'm reading that stuff right now. And despite several reports, there's no actual connection between Propaganda Lodge in 1877 and Propaganda Due, as far as we can tell. Let's see, Propaganda Masonica, which was the original Propaganda Lodge, ended up fizzling out, and it wasn't until it was frequented by government officials across Italy, and the name was changed to Propaganda Due following World War II. But at the same time, you know, the sources that we read are scattered, and some say that the original Propaganda Lodge changed its name to Propaganda Due, and that morphed into the order that we know as P2, and then there are other sources that we read that said there's no connection, so we're really not sure what happened with that. Mike, did you have something to add?
Yeah, what I was going to say is, after World War II, the Grand Orient started numbering lodges, and that's when it became Propaganda Due, because it was two for the number 2. And then in the 1960s, the lodge basically was going defunct, but it was still in existence. It just was, there was very few meetings, very few members coming.
It just needed the right spark of personality.
That's right. That's right. But prior to that, though, what you were saying is that, because of where it was located, a lot of government officials attended because they were in town. There were people in that town, they were local to it at that point, so they would show up there. It wasn't like it was a political body back then. It was still just regular Masonry.
It was regular Masonry focused on research, but
that's correct.
Attracted a lot of high-ranking folks towards doors. Yeah. So in comes this this gentleman named Licio Gelli, who was born north of Florence in 1919, who ended up rising to prominence and becoming a very interesting figure in the life of P2, and who ended up doing research on Licio Gelli.
I can talk a little bit about him, sure. So he got his real start kind of as if you just follow along, I mean, you could really pretty much follow along on Wikipedia what they've got on him, but it's really interesting. He was super involved. He was kind of a liaison between the Italian government and the fascist party of the Nazis. He was a failed salesman, started a textile business, which I swear to God, I've heard the name of the mattress company he had. If I can remember it, or if I run across it again, I'll say it. But I think a lot of people might remember the mattress company that I think he started. But he was involved in all kinds of, just terrible things in terms of that era and socialism.
Well, it stemmed from him being really a militant follower of Mussolini.
Yeah. He was all about it. And then
he volunteered for the Black Shirts expeditionary forces, like in support of the fascists in the Spanish Civil War. Like,
what's interesting though, like I thought was kind of crazy is the name of this Black Shirts thing, and then later on what happens with P2 and the bank. But we'll hold off on that, I guess, because I don't want to go too far ahead. But
yeah, so Gelli ends up getting into a little bit of trouble. At the end of the war, he agreed to spy for the communists. He was, he had originally fought in Albania and received a commission from the SS in Italy to work on that liaison between Benito Mussolini and the Nazis. He actually got caught spying on account of Germany, and so he ended up saving his life to agree to spy for communist Russia after the war. At that point, he went to he went to Argentina and ended up being dual Italian Argentinian nationality.
That's really interesting too, because Argentina has like this. Any conspiracy site you look up as far as like Nazi stuff, like everybody says, oh, Hitler escaped and he goes to Argentina. And I have no doubt this is in ties and connections to a lot of what's going on here. Gelli is essentially part of a failed coup attempt. Sorry. And they're in Argentina. And while he's there, when he comes back, he gets, I think he's extradited some years later, spends like a couple months in jail in Switzerland, and then for the coup attempt, but also some more fascist party crimes relating to a bombing that killed like 80 something people in it's called the Bologna railway station bombing. 85 people were killed there. They sentenced him to 8 years in absentia, and he ends up turning himself in some years later. But I think he only served 14 months in jail.
Yeah, it wasn't a long time.
But this guy was like the Grand Master of P2, right?
Yeah. And he also supposedly he was also good friends with Juan de Perón, which was the leader of Argentina for all those years too. The one who I can't think of the name now. All of a sudden, it's blown my mind. But that's where the song "Don't Cry for Me, Argentina" from that movie with Madonna. I can't even think of Evita. That's Evita. It. Yeah, Evita Perón. Yeah, she was his wife.
Right, so, and Gelli actually initiates Perón into the Masonic order. His clandestine Masonic order.
Yeah. It's interesting. He strikes up this friendship with Perón. At the same time, he's also working with the ex-Gestapo chief Klaus Barbie in Argentina, and then Perón actually appoints Gelli to the position of Argentina's economic advisor to Italy. And that's where Gelli actually goes back to Italy, and becomes heavily involved in Propaganda Due or P2. Sorry, allergies are killing me right now. So according to my sources, P2 is really reinvigorated in 1966 at the behest of then Grand Master Giordano Gamberini, who was the Grand Master of the Grand Orient of Italy. And unlike the old Propaganda Due Lodge, which was really just a research lodge that a lot of influential men frequented, Gamberini really had a plan to establish Propaganda Due as an elite of the elite Masonic Lodge. He wanted to establish a group of eminent men who would be sympathetic to and useful to Freemasonry. The man chosen to create this elite band and create Propaganda Due was, of course, some textile manufacturer named Licio Gelli, who had been initiated into Freemasonry 2 years earlier in 1964. So the group of men that Gelli really brought together on behalf of the Grand Master was called Raggruppamento Gelli Propaganda Due, or P2 for short. And the members actually became known as the Piduisti or the P2ists. Gelli had crazy high ambitions for P2. His P2 was really a lodge that combined combine the goals of a community of self-interest with being the acquisition of wealth and power and furtherance of the self. And so Gelli actually starts running P2 almost as an organized crime syndicate, in the sense of many men joined P2 because they believed that Gelli's patronage was indispensable to the furtherance of their careers. Gelli ended up using ruthless blackmail to bring people into the lodge. He demanded state official secrets from members.
This is why we don't mix religion and politics in lodge.
Right.
Right.
In essence, P2 is what the Illuminati was accused of being.
Yes.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was just absolutely crazy what this leader of this lodge ended up doing.
Had to be extremely charismatic to get in 66, revitalize an almost dying lodge, an unheard of lodge, form all these political games, have like high influential people coming to this lodge. There's just a lot of swirl happening just all at once.
I think it boils down to the amalgamation of the who's who. It was an easy way. It was like, hey, I got this club. You guys come. You're all members. Bada boom, bada bing. It's not like all these guys were into, esoterics or whatever. This is an umbrella, and like what you see is 966 names. They said on this list.
It was just under 1,000. Yeah.
So we got just under 1,000 names on this stuff. To give you an idea, remember I said I would remember the name of the company. It's Permaflex, and Permaflex, believe it or not, I'll show you right here, still makes mattresses out of Italy. Permaflex Mattress Company in Italy. High-end customizable furniture platform. It's still...
Do you stuff money in the mattress? Is that how you order it? You get
That's
it?
right.
Okay.
It's so comfortable because you could stuff it full of lira, or no, they use euros now, right? Like you stuff it full. Yeah. It's just fascinating to see. It is like when you think about money, power, and influence, this whole thing is right up there with something like the Colombian Tony Montana. Like,
I would have said The Godfather Part 3.
Okay, there you go.
Because actually, I have evidence here. This was used in the movie because they changed the name, because the bank that is in the scandal is Banco Ambrosiano, but in the movie it's International Immobiliare, and that's the Vatican Bank. And in the movie they talk about God's banker, and that guy's name in there was Frederick Kenzig, and that's actually the equivalent of Roberto Calvi. And at some point in the movie, which is really funny, it was shortly after I joined Masonry and I did hear about P2, didn't make any real connections, but I was watching The Godfather 3, and all the way through, right up until the point where God's banker is found hanging off of Blackfriars Bridge in the movie, is when all of a sudden all the bells and whistles hit, and I went, wait a minute, rewound, and found all that. So yeah, but Godfather 3 is actually, it was in there. So including the death of Pope John Paul I, which in the movie they turn into an assassination, where we don't know if that's really what happened or not. So
this continues on for a good 8 or so years. In 1976, a Freemason by the name of Francesco Sinicalchi, and I'm butchering the Italian, I know, actually tried to call attention to the subversive and potentially criminal dealings of P2, and he was essentially summarily ignored because Gelli had so much power.
It's like, no, we can't throw this guy out. He's cool. Right.
Yeah, until 1974, when the Grand Lodge had enough of it, right, John?
Yeah, so this is fascinating. Reading up, because I want to find out when did Gelli get expelled, and or when did P2 cease to exist? And the answer is it's complicated, because this guy has so much political power. He also has political power in the Grand Orient. So it's not as easy to just throw out everybody's, or at least, I wouldn't say everybody's favorite guy, the guy who has the most dirt on everyone. You're not going to throw him out, even if you want to. So the then Grand Master, who in late 1974 proposed that P2 be erased. They call it erased. That the lodge, the charter, be taken away. And so in the Grand Orient Communication in December 1974, of the 406 lodges represented, 400 of them voted for its erasure. They all wanted P2 gone. But shortly thereafter, 3 months later, in March 1975, Gelli found some dirt on the Grand Master under the topic of gross financial irregularities. Oh, and all of a sudden the Grand Master's like, no, it's all good. Don't worry about that. We're gonna
KK, LOL. Okay, thanks, bye.
yeah, right. We're gonna withdraw all the accusations. And you know what? Here's a new charter. Here's a warrant for a new charter for a new P2 lodge. Despite the fact that everyone had voted to erase it just 4 months earlier. So there must have been some really good stuff on the Grand Master of the Grand Orient at that time. So at that point, P2 was still considered regular. And therefore, once it had got a new charter, all the membership was no longer secret and had to be revealed. And it revealed that Gelli was the master of the lodge. So shortly thereafter that, 1976, Gelli himself requested that the P2 lodge be suspended but not erased, not expelled. This way, he's kind of off the books. The lodge is in hiding. It's not expelled. So therefore, he can still run his super secret club under the auspice of the P2 lodge that's not irregular yet because it's not expelled. It's just suspended. And then everybody keeps doing what they're doing.
You know what's funny about this, John? Not to derail anything you're saying, but these guys are criminals anyway.
They're finding everything.
But all this, but somehow they care what the Grand Master thinks.
Masonic jurisprudence rules.
And they want to make it. They want everybody to believe that they're Masons.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you know, I mean, maybe they went through the 3 degrees and they also just engage in nefarious actions. It's just hilarious to me, right? I mean, yeah. Let's embezzle money and, you know, take care of the Vatican's cash through a Banco. But listen, we gotta do what's right by Masonry.
Remember your oaths.
Remember our oaths.
Yeah, I don't think they even did that well.
Right. Which is interesting because the Grand Orient of Italy officially expelled Gelli in 1976. But the story doesn't end there. He was still found to be active in the uprising of electing a new Grand Master, even up to 2 years later.
Yes, he financed a rival Grand Master's platforming campaign and got him elected.
This is amazing. He's been expelled, and still 2 years later, he's like pushing another candidate up through to be the Grand Master of the Orient.
And it takes another 5 years after that,
right,
for a tribunal to come back and say, oh, by the way, yeah, remember when we voted in 1974 to erase P2 off the register? That actually should be upheld, and P2 hasn't existed since 1974.
Right. So that was kind of them.
Because you can totally just go back and backdate that, right?
Yeah, don't worry about it. So they were trying to make it official that, no, really, in 1974 was the real vote. 400 of the 406 lodges, they all said it's gone. But therefore, all the way up through 1981, it was running clandestinely, and we all know it for that. All the activities it was doing was obviously not in the spirit of Masonry, but now at least they had some Masonic jurisprudence to catch him on.
But at the same time, up until 1981, which was the year the tribunal declared that it had been gone since 1974, up until 1981, I think a lot of the criminal activities of P2 were mostly kind of circumstantial. You can't find a lot of detail on those outside of, there was some shady stuff going on, bro. Mm-hmm. But starting in 1981, that's where things start to really get interesting, because you start to see that in 1981, there were suspicions that P2 members were involved in the bombing of the Bologna railway station. And not only that, but obstructing the investigation afterward. Now, that's actually been documented, that they spread falsehoods and false stories and actually tried to actively obstruct the investigation into the railway bombing. Yeah, it killed 85 people and wounded more than 200. Eventually blamed on a far-right terrorist group, but again, there were suspicions that that P2 was involved in that for some reason. P2 members also brought down an entire bank. They were involved in the collapse of the Banco Ambrosiano, one of Milan's principal banks, which we've already mentioned was owned in part by the Vatican Bank, owned by which was also owned in part by a New York bank owned by P2 associate, P2 member Michel Sedona, who was himself suspected of facilitating money laundering network with the mafia involving Banco Ambrosiano and the Vatican Bank. So these guys are in deep.
You can't make the stuff up. You got the mafia, you got the Freemasons, and you got the Catholic Church. It's a trifecta right there.
Yeah.
This is the basis for the Illuminati. Like, all the stuff that, like, I would say goes along in today's pop culture Illuminati references in a lot of the hip hop culture and stuff. That's where it all comes from. And then it comes over and, like, we get the requests from guys in like Nigeria and princes over there who are like, hey, we're in the Illuminati. It's changed my life. Call this number.
Yeah, or I want to be a Freemason because I want to have riches, wealth, and power.
Yep.
Like we see those almost every single day on Facebook, on the groups we moderate.
Still looking for mine. Still waiting.
Yeah, me too. It's sucked a lot of money out of me.
Yeah, I'm still trying to figure out when I start getting that $1 million every week.
But it's interesting because P2 had some unintended consequences as well. They ended up bringing down the entire Italian government because of that list of P2 members that was found at Gelli's home during a raid. During a law enforcement raid on his property. They found that list of about 1,000 members. You have to understand the political climate in Italy at this time was very conservative and in a sense very anti-Masonic. So there was a Christian government in power that was very anti-Masonic, which is why the Grand Master was trying to build P2 into an influential group in the first place. But after it came out that a number of government members were members of P2, the entire government of Arnaldo Forliani is the Christian Democrat government of Arnaldo Forliani just completely fell, and that was due very much in part to the exposure of that list with those names. So these guys just wreaked havoc in Italy in the 70s and 80s, all purporting to be Masons.
Right. I think it led to a law in 81 also that banned secret organizations.
Yes.
At which point I think that's when...
That's an Italian law.
Right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes. And yeah, it was they actually, that particular organization's definite, with the way that they defined it, it was secret organizations, and it is that they have to be secret, though. It's not like societies with secrets like the regular Masons, because regular Masons are still allowed there. It's that they, this one, they had secret lists, they had secret memberships, they had, granted, they met in the same lodge that they used to, but it was still, they had a secret list of all their membership. It was not public, where you can actually find out who's a member of Masonry today.
So this is really interesting, because when you look at the influence that this P2 lodge had over everything, the politics and religion at the time. It really makes a lot more sense to me now why there's still a lot of inner conflict between the Catholic Church and Freemasonry today, because they've been burned by the worst possible case of clandestine Freemasonry. And because obviously they're not going to know all the secrets of what goes on behind a Masonic lodge, they're going to assume the worst because of, I don't know, almost 2 decades worth of being, screwed over by this artificial organization.
Right. And their guy, Roberto Calvi, I mean, he worked for the Banco Ambrosiano, which, again, it was a big influence on the Vatican Bank. And eventually Banco Ambrosiano ends up $1.4 billion in debt and collapses, which actually has a huge effect on the Vatican Bank, because that's their money,
And that's after Calvi's murder too, right?
Right. That's actually, they discovered that after he was murdered and left hanging on Blackfriars Bridge.
Wait, he was murdered? What happened?
Well, actually, let me rephrase that, because at the time they said it was a suicide because he had bricks in his pocket. He's hung by the neck and has $15,000 cash. And only days before is when he was fired from Banco Ambrosiano and removed from all of the all of his jobs. I mean, he was literally, targeted, and basically they stated that he was the whole problem, get out, and then, they hung him from that. Somebody hung him from that bridge, because later on there has been more determination, because I believe his 37-year-old son, 10, 12 years later, something like that, started, and it had an investigation started, and the FBI was even involved in that, and they've determined murder, but they've only come down, the last I saw, they came down to 4 possible suspects. I don't know if they've actually narrowed it down even further. So
that's interesting. And there are even more conspiracy theories that swirl around P2 and this entire situation. One conspiracy theory says that P2 was actually had a part in the death of Pope John Paul I in 1978, just 33 days after his election to papacy.
And again, they used that in The Godfather 3, because in the movie you see that Pope John Paul I, because he's actually calling for an audit. There's actually this whole thing about the audit of the Vatican Bank and International Immobiliari, and then he's poisoned in the movie. So was he poisoned in real life? Who knows? But that was done in the movie. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and it's just crazy to me that with all of this wheeling and dealing, like Robert said earlier in the show, Gelli ended up spending maybe like 14 months in jail, and then died peacefully at like the age of 96 a couple of years ago. I think it was like 2015.
Right. Yeah. Not too long ago at all. So.
Right. And also Nobel Prize, almost got a Nobel Prize.
That's right.
Mother Teresa was actually one of the people who was advocating for him to get a Nobel Prize in literature in, I think, 1996.
Right, 1996, He was going to get a Nobel Prize in literature. He was supported by Mother Teresa and Naguib Mahfouz.
It's crazy to think about it. And they talked about his, I want to say like his main vision, his main goal for P2 and how that was to work, and how with that organization, it really tied into his kind of political alignment and his political ideology. And then you see later on his commentary about the later Italian government, and he's basically saying, I should have patented my system because now they're using it in real government and it's working. And and he basically is talking about how he should have like he was right all along. It was this vindication moment for him, I think.
Right, because in 2003, Gelli told the La Repubblica that it seemed that the P2 Democratic Rebirth Plan was being implemented by Silvio Berlusconi.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, I believe Berlusconi was actually on his list. One of the politicians on his list. Yeah, I know that that Gelli remained in a huge fascist advocate for most, if not all, of his life, and had even talked about wanting to completely rework the Italian Constitution. So this guy had a lot of fire, a lot of passion, a lot of aims, and not too many misgivings about who he trampled on to achieve those. So again, it just blows my mind as I was reading this and doing this research that like this is where the majority of the conspiracy theories that I hear about Masonry today, at least the non-religious conspiracy theories, come from, or at least it reinforces those, despite the fact that it was not any action that was condoned by the Grand Lodge. It was just a bunch of rogue elements, and really one primary puppet master just controlling everybody underneath him through blackmail, fear, and the promise of power.
So like a grand secretary then.
Yeah.
No comment.
Yeah. And I will tell you too, though, that, like the Blackfriars Bridge, that piece right there is used as a credible idea of that it was Masonry because, well, friars are monks. They call each other brothers. And therefore, and the Masons in Propaganda Due call themselves brothers, and dark brothers at that. They actually made a thing about calling them that. So therefore, Blackfriars Bridge, they used it. That's proof that it was Propaganda Due that killed, Roberto Calvi.
That is a slippery slope of an argument.
Yeah, well, it's one of the things I found. I'm reading that and going, we would intentionally use all that symbolism,
right? Exactly,
to point at ourselves. That you're right. You're 100% right. We would actually want to take credit for it. Yeah. Okay.
Hindsight is 20/20, especially when you make it up.
That's right. See, it all traces back. Back to the Catholic Church connection too. I think again, I'm so fascinated that this is the buildup of the distrust of the Vatican with Freemasonry, where even when Pope Francis became the new pope, that shortly thereafter, him being the cool pope, there's a lot of people thinking maybe he would turn around some of the antiquated policies of the Catholic Church. And one of them being, I do remember reading an article about within probably his first year that he was approached on an airplane about, what do you think of Freemasons? And, basically he says, basically I don't support the Masonic agenda.
Yeah, he also made some statements about being frustrated with lobbyists. Because he was seen as this cool pope, and he's like, I'm so tired of the lobbyists, these lobbyists, and the Freemason lobbyists.
Right. And so that's interesting because there, at least maybe there is a Masonic lobby going on with the Catholic Church. I'm not saying there couldn't be. I'm not aware of it, but at the same time, you could tell that there's now the schism, the separation between the Catholic Church and Freemasonry as it has evolved, some 40 years later. It's just fascinating to see the ripple effects to today's time period of what P2 did in the Vatican. So thanks, guys. Appreciate it. Thanks, Clandys.
Yeah, thanks for messing it up for the rest of us. This story, by the way, is super convoluted. I mean, there are so many different moving parts. Like when I was researching this, I was having trouble just keeping the date straight chronologically. You know, we bounced all over the place kind of in the show because that's just kind of how the story goes. We're looking at a lot of this that wasn't discovered until, 5, 10, 15 years after it had actually happened. And so it's a really interesting story. It's a good way to guard ourselves against what not to do. And yeah, one man caused all of this damage and lasting damage, not only to Italy but to Freemasonry in general, just because he wanted to use Freemasonry as a way to get himself ahead in life.
All right.
And he largely succeeded.
Yeah. And he didn't, I mean, don't get me wrong on this. I'm not saying he wasn't a criminal, but we don't know that each little intricate piece that we have found are actually all connected as a whole either. I mean, was Roberto Calvi working for him when he was doing all of what he was doing? And, what about Michelle was it Sandiano or whatever from the mafia in New York?
Yep.
At the Franklin Bank, these things are they all connected to one? Just because it all happened at once doesn't mean that it's a connected piece, but yeah, there's connections there. Just doesn't mean it's all the same working gears.
Yep. All right. It's about that time to start wrapping things up. Let's go around to Robert Johnson to start taking us home. What were your thoughts on this episode, Robert?
Well, I had first heard about this entire P2 thing years ago when I was reading a book by Robert Anton Wilson about conspiracy theories and clandestine organizations worldwide, whether they be reptilian overlords by David Icke or the P2 movement by the nefarious Blackfriar Freemasons of Italy. And then I later saw a TV program, which was like one of these top 10 Masonic myths or, some garbage that was on History 15 years ago, probably 20 years ago, really. And I just remember the imagery of Roberto Calvi hanging under a bridge and them talking about, the tide, and it had to have been a murder. And, they opened an investigation in 82, then in 92, then in 02. And there's always this huge battle between the Calvi family trying to get the basically a life insurance policy that they spent the better part of 20 years trying to get, but they couldn't get because it was a suicide. Then when they said it was a murder, they settled, and they only got a little bit of money because they had to pay for all the legals that had happened in the preceding years. And as Jason pointed out, so convoluted and so huge. And it's taxing to just read because, like, I dare you to go on the internet and dive into Wikipedia and take the red pill and just go from like start reading, see a highlight link, click it, read that. Then you go to the next one, the next one, the next one. And pretty soon you're 15 pages away from where you started. This is one of those things, and it's because it's mafioso. It's just so interconnected and wild and crazy and would make the coolest movie. And I guess there were 3 or 4 like adaptations of things that were done, mostly documentarian style or documentary style. I would like to see Hollywood version with explosions, get some Michael Bay to do a little bit of
Michael
that.
Bay would be the perfect guy for that.
Yeah, I need Michael Bay. I need Johnny Depp.
And Johnny Royal.
Johnny Royal. Yeah. Johnny Royal, you can direct it, but you got to get Johnny Depp to gain I want to see Johnny Depp gain 80 pounds and play Calvi.
Hey, maybe we can even get Richard Greco to come back to work too,
Perfect. So enjoyed the episode. Huge thanks to Jason for doing the lion's share of the research on this episode, especially presenting tonight when you got that nerd disease going on. So anyway, love you guys, and thanks so much for watching this show. And check out Whence Came You Sunday nights, 9:30. I got Joe Martinez on the program this week. It's going to be great. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Very cool. Oh, and you can't have a movie related to Freemasonry without Nick Cage. Got to throw him in there somewhere.
Oh God, yeah. How did I forget that? He gets to play. Gelli. Licio Gelli is played by Nick Cage. Perfect.
Wow.
Yes. What?
I can already.
Who has money?
Love it. Awesome. Thank you. Mike the intern, final thoughts.
So, yeah, I really enjoyed this. I was glad to do a little bit more digging, too, on the bank scandal and so forth, and tie it to Godfather 3. I love that movie. Actually, I love all the Godfather movies. That's, one of my little hobbies I do. But in any case, I've got a little shout out here to do. Yes, it's to another podcast called the Freemason Podcast, fairly new within the last 6 months. To my buddy George Mudry who runs that kind of out of Connecticut, Morningstar Lodge. So anyway, I'm enjoying that new podcast, and I really enjoyed the whole P2 thing. It's really kind of cool. So thanks.
All right, good stuff. Next up, Juan Sepulveda. How's it going, Juan?
I was here assuring continuity of government. I will not be sleeping with the fishes. I did not say a word. So I'm the designated survivor. No, brothers, I did very little research. I did read a little bit and watch some videos, but I really wanted to take a seat and just enjoy the great research that you brothers did. You did an amazing job. This is a fascinating topic. I became aware of the story with Propaganda Due after becoming a Mason. So fortunately, I didn't stumble upon any of these YouTube videos and even some documentaries that have a crazy mix of real information and just like far-fetched conjecture. So, but very, very interesting. In this story is a great example of when that expression that says power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. When you have people that get too much power, like this particular group in you were talking about the fact that when it was considered a Masonic or pseudo-Masonic group, that instead of collecting dues, it collected pretty much intelligence. It collected assets that were intelligent, pretty much intelligence in nature. So that is danger. That's just a sign right there of some really nefarious things. So we're very fortunate that we're in the bright light side of history, and that we're far away from this kind of controversy, because God knows our fraternity could not this would not be good for the fraternity if it were to happen in this decade, I don't think.
Well, so let's talk about that. I mean, that's something you can think about independently, is what would that look like if there were such an influential political figure that could influence, let's just say, American Grand Lodge. What would be the ripple effects for the next couple of years of Freemasonry today if this were happening in 2019?
Is this your segue into talking about the Mueller report? I don't know.
The part is redacted, so you're not going to really.
Okay, all right.
Not really going to know.
No, it
Hashtag
really
no Masonic collusion.
That's right. it really would be it would be bad. Like if you were to think of the fact that we are in a battlefront where we are doing the best that we can to share truth about what Masonry is, and on the other side you have entertainment media like hip hop cementing an idea of Illuminati, Freemasonry, occult, kind of a negative connotation to what we do. In addition to that, if you were to have a scandal of abuse of power and influence in politics from the order, I think that would be very detrimental to the fraternity. So we won't forgive it. Keep it under wraps.
There you go.
All right, brothers. Thank you for everything. Thank you for all the participation. It's been very interesting. A few people knew about the story, and they were asking a lot of questions and sharing some links. So if you get a chance, go to the comment sections and let us know if you knew about this, and share some links to further information. Thank you, brothers.
All right. Thank you, Jason Richards.
All right. Yeah, I've been wanting to do this show for a while. So I'm glad we were able to actually band together and get it knocked out. Really interesting story, just fascinating. And it just goes to show you that power just is a corrupting force. And or I would say, power corrupts absolutely, but this guy Gelli, he just used Freemasonry as a platform for his own personal game, and it was just it's an interesting story. It's just sad that it had such a negative impact on Italy, on the post World War II era, and then a lasting negative impact on Freemasonry as well. So I wanted to let everybody know, moving away from that topic, that we got one more week that we're selling tickets to Esotericon, the Mid-Atlantic Esotericon, on June 15th. So go check out the Facebook page. It's April 26th is the last day that we're going to be selling tickets, because we got to get the food ordered. So it's going to be fantastic. We've got a lot of great speakers between Jamie Paul Lamb, P.D. Newman, Robert Johnson, John Ruark, Brother Greg Kaminsky, Frater O is going to be on. There's going to be all sorts of awesome folks who are going to be coming and just sharing all sorts of esoteric goodies with us. So it's going to be a lot of fun. Don McAndrews, you know him from the Operatives episode, as well as the Royal Arch episode. He's going to be there. He's actually given me kind of a sneak preview of his program, and it's going to be phenomenal. So you're going to want to come. You're going to want to check it out. If you are not a Mason, or if you are a Mason recognized by Virginia, the Grand Lodge of Virginia, great. You can come to everything. If you are not a Mason, or a Mason belonging to a jurisdiction that Virginia doesn't recognize, that's okay, because over half of our programs are untiled. So you can still walk around, hang out, and see at least half the content. So you're going to want to check out the Mid-Atlantic Esotericon on Facebook.
I'm untiled. Come
and
see.
Robert's untiled. So exciting.
It's going to be the best presentation there anyway, and it's untiled. So
Unclean.
I can believe that it'll be the best.
Just wait and see, baby.
Until John T. Ruark comes on. And then that one will be the best.
Confirmed.
Right.
And we got some surprises for folks who come as well. So more on that.
Actually, later. I'm really looking forward to Don McAndrews and Greg. So
yeah, they'll be awesome.
It's kind of like Peter Gibbons in Office Space, when every day is the worst day of his life. Except at Esotericon, every presentation will be the best presentation of the day as you go along. What about this one? Is this the most awesome presentation? Yes, it is. So that's what we hope to get. It's really going to be a really good lineup. I know we've talked about that way too much, but I'm looking forward to it too. Thank you, Jason. Off to me. Yeah. Again, my first introduction to this was Godfather Part 3, and seeing a guy hang from a bridge, and I said, what is up with that? And then doing a little bit of that same research that Robert did back in the late 90s, early 2000s of, well, the Masons were behind it. Well, were they? It doesn't sound like something that they would do. And so the web that was woven throughout the 60s and 70s to form this P2 Lodge was fascinating. And so I really have a greater understanding, not appreciation, but understanding as to why it has had such cultural implications, even 40 years later. So that's it. This has been a great episode, and we'll see you next week. Thank you all very much for watching, and keep searching for more light. Have a good night. Now, Hannah, I heard that you have a Masonic birthday coming up.
Yeah, actually, 2 days from now, I will be. It will be my third Masonic birthday. I will have been raised 3 years ago on the 20th of April.
Oh, you're a Masonic toddler! Congratulations!
Yeah.
I clap for you.
Wait, did you say you were raised on 420?
Yes. Yeah.
That's special.
Yeah. It was actually, and I was actually the inspection candidate for that night. And I was recalling too, because Chris Maddie was talking in the on the sidebar there that somebody he knew was the guy in a lodge when they did the degree work that the district deputies thought I was coached, and that was actually me. So yeah.
Wow, that's funny.
Because I wasn't prompted for any of my stuff, but I'd read so much that it was,
You got literally, you were like, you got the best degree you could have gotten.
Oh yeah. That's what's nice about an inspection degree, because they have to do
inspection. So we don't use that term. Virginia had you're the highest quality degree team there to do yours.
Yeah.
The problem was that that Hammy started mouthing the words and prompting the folks when they looked on their lines. That's when they realized, oh, this guy might have done a little too much reading.
Yeah. No, but it was really funny because they during the at the end of the inspection they were like, you coached this guy, you practice, blah blah, and they're like, no, talk to him. He read more stuff. He probably knows more stuff than most of us in this lodge, is what they told their district deputy.
That's funny.
Awesome.
So, yeah.
That show was a grinder. By the way, the amount of research we had to do for that was
it was a lot, and you weren't lying. Like, it is really convoluted, and I hope
so confusing, sifting through like 10 different accounts that all say different things.
Yep. Oh yeah, and my favorite was starting on Wikipedia, and next thing I know, I'm researching Juan Perón to make sure I'm thinking that it's Evita and all that stuff, and I, honestly tonight I suddenly drew a blank on her name, but I remembered hearing about her, and I'm following that path and him, and I'm like, wait a minute, I need to get back to P2, which is where I started.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there are actually some books written about P2, but they're all in Italian. So I'm trying to find like an English translation of some of the books dedicated to P2 and their members.
Send it to RJ.
Really interesting.
Yeah,
he can probably read that for you.
Yeah. So my mom is like, I said, what do you? She asked me some. I was in one day or whatever, and she's ranting in Italian, and I was like, and I said something to her. And she said, when are you going to start speaking Italian again? And I said, Ma, I haven't talked Italian or spoke Italian since I was like 12. And she's like, he's like, yeah, you should probably learn it again.
Is that when you entered witness protection?
It is, yeah. So mom's been on my case about it. And so like I've been having to take I paid for what's the service? It's a web-based one that's not Rosetta Stone.
Oh, it's not Rosetta?
Like Duolingo.
No, that one's free.
Yeah.
Coney what?
It's I don't know, whatever it is. Orange is the logo.
Okay. There's a guy in my mother lodge that the village lodge. When he joined up, his one main rule was that he could not meet on Saturdays ever unless it was for like a special meeting. And that's because every Saturday he attends a class in Italian. And he's actually taken several trips to Italy to visit lodges there because he can talk to them now, So.
Robert, are you currently taking those? Are you currently studying it? Because I used to speak, not fluently, but I used to speak very good Italian.
Yeah.
and I've lost it. When I went to Italy in 2007 with my wife, like I was just chatting it up in Italian, and I haven't practiced. I haven't talked, so I've lost a lot of it. So if you wanna,
So
Yeah, but how's your
practice,
Spanish?
your Spanish is la leche, tío.
Well, I was married to a woman who was, somewhat Italian. So
Somewhat Italian.
Yeah, that counts.
she was adopted.
Yeah, put it-
Her adopted
Italian,
her stepfather who adopted her was actually Italian. So
You should put it in your CV. Trilingual. Yeah, you should put it. Yeah, you
Yeah.
speak English, Ohioan.
That's it.
Ohio.
Ohioan, yeah.
For all of our
And if you're Nick Johnson, Esperanto.
Esperanto.
yeah, like who would have known he knows some Esperanto? Like actually all of us, right? Like what a nerd.
I'm gonna actually get with him about learning that. So
With who? With Donnie?
no, Nick.
No,
Oh.
Donnie knows it as well, but
Oh,
his-
Donnie.
Yeah, Donnie speaks Esperanto.
Yeah, I've seen that on the site. So yeah.
Yeah, I was in shock. Like the other day, I posted something about what languages people spoke in the Winding Stairs group, and I for sure I knew that like Donnie was gonna put, what about Esperanto? But to my surprise, everyone's like, oh, such and such knows it, and the other dork knows it. I'm like, what?
Nerds.
What's his name out of Australia? Know some of that too.
Blake?
Blake?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
I mean, Miles?
Didn't he say he knows a little of that or something?
I think so.
Yeah.
All right. So for our people hanging on later, I'm going to use my Italian and say ciao. See you later.
Piacere, signore.